I'm Ron Becky. I'm the chair of the Internationalization Committee, or also known as the ISC at PCC. And as part of our efforts to familiarize people with other countries, we have a lecture series. And this one, we are happy to have Kalev Sepp from Estonia. Kalev is he lives here in Portland, and he was born in Estonia, came to this country about 27 years of age. He's a longtime electrical engineer and technologist with experience ranging back to Soviet era computer labs in Estonia. He's had a long career at Tektronix and currently works as a consultant for the Video Electronics Standards Association. He has a diploma from Tallinn Technical University in Estonia and MSEE and PhD degrees from the University of Washington. He's closely involved in the Estonian community in Oregon and follows the Estonian e-government initiatives. So he's going to be talking us today about the all electronic government in Estonia. Kalev?
Thank you, Ron, for a nice introduction. Appreciate. Let me just try to share here my screen. I would be happy to discuss the Estonian Digital Estonia, e-Estonia, enter e-Estonia. I've been away for quite a few years, but still follow it because it's along my specialty and my technology. My work has helped to build the technology that now Estonia is also using. So, and here I am, the president of Estonian Society. We have a small but active community in Estonia. We're in a Portland area. We met before this pandemic hit. We met every Sunday for folk dance practices and celebrate Estonian events. But obviously our activities now are somewhat limited, mostly online. So let me go back to a little bit in time. This was a computer lab around 1982 when I was in high school. Now, this is from our neighboring observatory. I couldn't find a picture of my school exactly, but these guys are not me, but I looked very similar. With magnetic tapes and even more archaic things. These were Soviet-made computers. Very much when I watched the Hidden Figures movie, of course, here is a more advanced setup and more spacious, but it reminded me a lot. My peripheral card reader here on the right, and what's most notable is the Tektronix oscilloscope. That it's an older generation. I did not work on it, but this is from 1950s. And we used for writing programs, we used machines like this, although this is a German version of it, but Soviet technology didn't look as nice, where you would type in here, and it would type on a paper and also produce a tape, as you see on the left here with punched holes. More advanced in US at the same time. I guess people were moving already to magnetic media, but or using a stack of cards, which was much easier to handle, and you didn't have to retype the whole program. But we didn't have that luxury, so we had to put it on a tape. It was called teletype machine. This was used generally for sending telegrams. So my agenda here, I don't necessarily want to give you technical or burden you with technical details on the how e-government works. I just want to give a little bit of a why Estonia has been successful, in my opinion, since I'm in a generation that pretty much started the digital revolution there, and briefly go over various e-society government services that may be more interesting or relevant, discuss some of the challenges that Estonia is facing, and or the overall e-government, e-voting, even in this country, there are big challenges and political effects that affect this. I have a list of resources that you can look at, and then we open it up for Q&A. So most of you, I hope, know where Estonia is. It's a small country here in the Baltics. So these are the 3 Baltic countries: Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The Belarus is here, that you have seen in the news. Ukraine is here. The conflict with Russia is occurring here. Poland, Germany, France, Spain. So Estonia is pretty far north here, just across from Finland, like 50 miles across the Finnish Bay, in Sweden and Norway here. And the Soviet Union, these Baltic states, they were part of Soviet Union until 1991. So a little bit more about myself. I grew, as Ron already mentioned, I grew up in the Soviet Estonia. I had to spend 2 years in the Soviet Army. I didn't know that the USSR will dissolve so fast. This was after high school, or actually being at the university first year. We were all conscripted to the army. But then when I came back, the Glasnost and Gorbachev came to power. He initiated this Glasnost, or this openness in the Soviet system. And then Estonia quickly picked up on the social movement, and some of you may have seen the singing revolution that Estonians, with really sparing no life, were able to quickly become independent. Estonia used to be independent between the 2 world wars as an independent country, but when the Second World War ended, Russians did not leave and occupied all the Baltic states and a lot of other territory and influence in the Eastern Europe. Yeah, and after that, pretty soon I got offered to come to US, to University of Washington, where I did my master's thesis and PhD in electrical engineering. And then I got a job here with Tektronix, where I worked for quite a few years. And now for a few years, I've been a consultant for high-tech for a standards committee that develops new technology, basically the DisplayPort and PC interfaces that you would, if people ask what I do, is I usually explain that I know something about electrical testing for all connections that you have on your laptop or tablet. And I've been involved with Estonian organizations already in Seattle and now in Portland. We have, besides the Portland Estonian Society, we have a festival here on East or West Coast every 2 years. And we just recently, in 2019, had one here in Portland. So I was involved with that as well. And we travel to Estonia quite often, our families. My wife is also Estonian. She's in Estonia at the moment. And we travel there quite often, or at least once a year. So what made Estonia successful in getting digital right away? I mean, the first thing I think is still education, the Soviet style education, although it was harsh and low on resources. My mother was a teacher, and you know, I know quite a few family members who have been teachers. The education system was still pretty good. It was maybe old style and a lot of sort of remembering, and labs weren't very useful, but generally the Soviet propaganda and communist propaganda also emphasized the importance of education. On the other hand, technical fields kind of attracted good students because if you went to social fields, they were often associated with communism and being part of Communist Party or so forth. So personally, I didn't want do much with that and chose a technical field. Back then, MBAs and many other social studies, or finances especially, where people, when I talk to my old colleagues in Estonia, they say, oh yeah, now we can't get any good students here in technical fields. Everybody wants to go to do marketing or MBAs or get a job in a bank, which is okay too. There is lots of technical stuff there as well, so it's not necessarily bad. But some of the computer stuff is hard. We have small and still dynamic workforce, so it's thanks to education, I think. And the Estonian rebuilding of the country coincided very well with the dot-com boom and computers. First, PCs that appeared in late 80s, became available for common folks, and that aligned very well with building up a new society, new systems, databases. So it was natural that we picked up the latest at the time. We didn't want to do create a huge paperwork for things that could be done with the computers. So we adopted a lot of state-of-the-art technology. People always point out that many people in Estonia didn't have even a landline, phone landline. They jumped into cell phones immediately. Finnish company Nokia probably has something to do in that, because they were close by, and Estonia was one of the first ones to adopt the Nordic cell phone technology. And Estonians, although you may think that communists were really looking for every person, and what they had a pretty good grasp on citizens, but that didn't really deter Estonians to accept the balance or the trade-offs that come with digital life, that somebody can hack or pretend that it's you and do some things online that are undesirable. And maybe back then it wasn't even clear. People were generally more blue-eyed, or sort of believed in the benefits of digital society. These issues arrived later, when people found out that they can do bad things as well. So it all results in a computer-savvy society, and that's, I think, was the reason why Estonia became so successful. By the way, if anybody has questions, raise your hand. Ron and Ramona are monitoring, or if you have problems with sound or otherwise, let me know. So I jump into some initiatives that also paved the way for e-society, that were started in early independence days. So, for example, the Tiger Leap started in '96 to 2000. Which was a big push to equip all the schools with computer education and computer labs in schools. There were these specific projects like PaltNet, Nixike, which is a school project to provide digital framework for schools. Külatee is a program for Village Road, a program to provide internet connection to rural areas. So that sort of also helped to grow up a new generation of computer literate students. First e-government portal was established in '98 with a sort of tagline, "Today I make decisions," and many other things. There are timelines on internet where you can see all the initiatives that Estonia took. Then the other factor that I want to point out is success of companies like Kazaa and Skype. That Kazaa was the file sharing thing that many youngsters remember. They got their illegal downloads of music or games. It was shut down later. But it grew into Skype, peer-to-peer networking, And we started using Skype, communicating with our families right away. And then there are these list of other companies that were that are considered very successful, basically unicorns. Unicorn means that these are startup companies that have a valuation more than $1 billion. So it was Taxify that was later renamed to Bolt. Skype itself that was sold to eBay and then to Microsoft and became part of Microsoft. TransferWise is a money transferring company, and Playtech, they create software for casinos and video betting machines. And as we speak, today was announced that we have now a fifth unicorn, Pipedrive. I didn't have time to put it on this slide. That was sold to, the majority ownership was sold to US venture company. What was the name of it? Some equity, Vista Equity or something like that. That came in just today. And obviously joining the European Union and the Eurozone, so basically Estonia is using Euro now. Not all countries in Europe use, or European Union use Euro, but Estonia does. And that obviously relinquished control over our own currency and the ability to control economy through the exchange rate, but on the other hand, increased significantly investment in Estonia, European investment especially, and also made the economy sort of independent of this exchange rate. And then Estonia became member of NATO. Now we have a lot of NATO, either military exercises or some other things happening in Estonia, and even some offices are set up there. And the basis for all this is that every citizen in Estonia, 99% they claim has a digital ID. This was also established in the before 2000 framework, or right about 2000, a smart card that has a wide functionality that can be used in accessing many services. So here is the slide of these unicorn companies, and this was in a pipeline, sort of becoming one. But once they sell the ownership, then it becomes it's a paper value, obviously. But so Pipedrive is now worth more than $1 billion as well. So it made the announcement in Estonia was that there are many more millionaires now in Estonia than yesterday. Of course, it's a paper money, so when it actually goes into the economy, it takes some time. E-government. I have my own card here, ID card, but there is an example here that is official example from Estonian government. And this is the card I was talking about, and you can see the smart card. This was used quite a bit before. Then everybody here got a bank card that has a smart card. And for all this, I wanted to point out that that it's not only technical solution. It had to make some of these things work. The legislation had to come on board and make sure that some of the services work properly with the ID card. I'm not expert in this design thinking, but that's if somebody has heard of it or used it in their work, the design thinking approach, where you basically lay out how you get new services and how do you set up the data exchange and all the security and safety mechanisms already designed in. Again, the e-identity, the i-voting obviously became an issue, and there are even challenges obviously here in this country and also in Estonia now. The overall conservative thinking is also challenging it there as well. There are YouTube videos where you can learn more about this. Wanted to bring out the fun fact that to do de-identification, basically separate, like you hear here when you take up from an envelope your belt and it's put in a different envelope, so the disassociation with your name, so that you can't go back to and tell how everybody voted. That was done with writing data on a CD-ROM. Basically, it was scattered and then removed the columns in Excel, and then the rest was saved in on a CD that was taken into a different location. I think it's used USB sticks now to then tally up all the votes. And one of the early things was obviously tax collection. It's all online. Treasury, customs, all is now done online. The only thing that at least the government officials, when I talk about the only thing that you really need to do in person is signing a marriage certificate, basically when you get married, and then when you actually buy real estate for signing the final agreement. I think you still have to show in person. And there are many other services like the land information system, where every lot and the land parcel is taken care with the information system. That's completely online. There are government services that the public doesn't access to, like real estate people or different type of agricultural people. They have different additional services besides that regular public has. The health and prescriptions are all online. And then we get into e-residency. This was one of the more recent initiatives where they allow people all over the world become e-residents. So you become a sort of a citizen of Estonia virtually. You don't have to identify, of course, yourself, but then you can open a company in Estonia and pay taxes there. You still have to pay taxes and conduct business. And of course, this was a little bit of a sort of a backdoor into European Union. Estonia is part of European Union, and now more restrictions have been put on. And recently in the news, there have been also several abuses reported, how people become e-residents, and then they, like a month ago, there was a big news article or complaint that it's not transparent. Apparently, the investigation revealed that there is certain recipes how you can abuse the e-residency, and they made the report secret, not to reveal how this can be abused, and that created a lot of sort of media attention. Why we hide things, but I think it was understood that, and some of the things have been already changed, I think. And then the concept of digital embassy. Data is so valuable now. You have to protect it, and if Estonia is not in the area of earthquakes or anything, but still anything could happen, especially in overall security, having a neighbor that is aggressive, and so Estonia set up a data embassy, basically a copy, I guess a real-time backup copy of data, essential data in another country, and they chose Luxembourg for this purpose. So here's another slide I found somewhere on their website with a time when something was established. I'll have a little bit more talk about X-Road, the hardware or the software platform that is the backbone of this this e-government. You see some of the things that there's quite a bit of a blockchain effects as well that the e-government has adopted and has enabled this whole effort. E-residency, I already mentioned quite a few things here. So it's citizenship without physical presence. You can establish a company and manage it anywhere in the world. You get a business bank account and security banking, digitally sign and transmit documents, and declare taxes online. What are the challenges? I already have mentioned quite a few. The ID card itself went through few hiccups. The manufacturer of this, which is not an Estonian company, they made some mistakes in generating the unique ID. It turned out that it's not as random as expected, and so it was easier, at least theoretically, break. I think they couldn't prove anybody was really using it, but apparently professors or researchers at the Tartu University found out that the ID card is not as secure as they were expecting, and so they had to be replaced in a fairly quick order. But again, with small country, it wasn't such a big deal. Another issues, of course, remain with digital and age divide, meaning that people who don't have computers, although like I said, Estonians are pretty computer literate, but there are still people, even like my mother, who's more than 80 years old. She is not taken up on digital communication because it seems, in her opinion, it's always changing and always breaking. So it's hard to convince her to adopt it. Unfortunately, I have myself and my sister and brothers can help, so it's not a big deal. The same way the age itself poses a divide as well. The literacy is not so good, and especially the need to update constantly, and even discard software just got update yesterday, for example, on my computer. Again, I need to update the software that this card takes to even access to banks or other services. And then the money laundering, the KYC, know your customer. Some of you may be familiar with those efforts to avoid illegal banking and money transfers. Those are obviously complicating this what is it called? Blanking out. The e-government and activity. And then also privacy laws of Europe. Recently, you read here in the US how US is behind in establishing equivalent privacy laws for our own US citizens, as well as in interaction with European customers and so forth. A couple of days ago, even Estonia declared that their citizens should not use like Facebook and Google authentication because the data is going over to US, and that's in conflict with European privacy and security laws. So things are evolving as we speak. And then obviously computer viruses, ransomware, and phishing attacks, they are still causing issues. Although this card really can't be used without hardware authentication, which is somewhat limited too, but you have to put it in a smart card reader and authenticate yourself. You are given a couple of PIN codes that for different levels of activity you have to plug in, and you should not write them down anywhere next to your screen, but remember them. How are we doing on time? I think it's it's quite fine. I think cybersecurity. I mentioned perhaps that Estonia got early exposure in 2007 when misinformation campaign from Russia. There was an issue with one of the Second World War monuments that had become a nuisance. Certain groups started partying and just creating a racket on Russian significant days, and so Estonia decided to move the monument to a different location next to the cemetery where it really belongs. You know, communist regimes and many other regimes, of course, they establish monuments with their wins. Well, we have somewhat a related issue here in the U.S. now with these recent disturbances, but Estonia or Russia created a lot of misinformation, and so Estonia became a target of a massive cyber attack. Of course, in 2007, the systems weren't as advanced, and Estonia was more or less successfully able to deter it. And it gave it sort of a confidence that we're able to do it. I think it added to the confidence of the e-government overall, that we can defend ourselves. But it's definitely essential for stability and all this, the e-governments as a whole and all the services. So when Estonia became a NATO member, they established this NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Estonia. It's not a NATO proper subdivision, but it's helping NATO to train their personnel. We're making sure that the military and governmental infrastructure is safe. And so they do hacking here in a tent on a field to, I think, try to break some systems and also just exercise. In terms of virus scanner, just a fun fact here that the Malwarebytes, this company some of you may have, the software Malwarebytes virus scanner on your PC, or I think they have versions for Mac and Linux as well. And they have a development center in Estonia. So X-Road is the backbone of the Estonia. It was sort of the data exchange layer that they quickly realized that they have to build in order to make all this e-government work. So they claim that they have 2,500 services. This includes all these agency-wide or agency exchange services that not necessarily every person has to. They said something like 400 is max that a private person has to or may need to access in this e-government. But 2,500 total, basically, between different agencies. They have police involved and customs, and if you count up, that's how many you get. And this service now is actually managed by, I have a slide later, the Nordic countries, and they exported it to Nordic countries and Africa even. I know a guy who's a little bit involved in that. And a lot of cooperation. This slide or the image here is just a recent October 27th announcement that Estonia and German Dial, whichever is their e-government equivalent, are collaborating, and Estonia is helping Germany to get to the same level of e-government governance as Estonia has. And Nortal is one of the companies that actually has a pretty big development and marketing unit in Seattle. Has done a lot of work in actually working out the services and infrastructure, and they're working here with cell phone companies mostly, but trying to apply the same technology. And Nortal was was awarded a Exporter of the Year award for Estonian companies. So the company with the biggest export amount in Estonia. Another infographics, this Nordic Institute for Interoperability Solutions is managing, I think now the way I understand, the X-Road infrastructure. So here you see different databases, and I think it's a selection of them really, but when you go to YouTube, you can learn how to install X-Road, at least for testing purposes and learning purposes, but they have taken over the management of this. And here are, if some of you are software engineers, you see maybe, you notice here some of your GitHub and various other Jira is for requirement management. I've used a few of these myself in my career, but obviously things are changing and they include lots of tools. Slack is another one that some of you may know. Then news as we speak. As I was putting together this presentation, I already mentioned the news were coming in. There's IT Uudised, IT news in Estonia. It's a pretty good website that brings out the main happenings in the e-government and IT field in general. I already mentioned this first one that to avoid Facebook or Google authentication, when you go to some service or log in, you see the options to use Facebook or Google for authentication, but for e-government, they discourage it now due to some conflicts with, because of lack of privacy laws in US, at least to the same level as in the European Union. And another interesting thing was British business, Estonia was complaining that they weren't able to attract enough businesses from Britain. It's kind of weird that due to the Brexit, British will lose a lot of presence in Europe. So Estonia was hoping to capitalize on that and attract them to Estonia so that they could have subsidiaries or business in the European Union. And that was a complaint that Estonians haven't apparently done a good job to attract British to come to cold Estonia and spend the winter there to maintain their access to European markets. These are random tidbits, so hopefully it makes sense, not necessarily related. Another Estonian statistics department announced that they have reached a world record where the census, when the census is due next year, like we had in US this year, that 70% of data will come from e-government databases, that they don't need to really question anybody. Only 30% they will do sort of face-to-face, going door to door, or somehow creating some questionnaires or whatever. So that there is a benefit of having this e-government. Similarly, they reported that they have more data that the government can handle, that they could produce so many more parameters and data correlations, but the government is unable to make decisions on them. So they're just waiting, they can pull out any data that could be useful, but just government basically shows how the e-government has run, or the cart has become in front of the horse, that the politicians haven't been able to handle all the data that e-government or the databases behind can produce. Also alarming was the Digital Government Index. Somewhat a week ago, former Estonian President Ilves brought this out to the attention of everybody, that we have fallen by some metric, whatever this Digital Government Index is, that we have fallen below average of OECD this is the economic cooperation countries. That's alarming that our conservative government, well, it's not conservative, but it's a coalition of various, one of the parties there in this coalition is very conservative, and they're trying to shut down some of the e-government initiatives like e-voting and a few other things. And then, but hopefully that will be, Estonia can maintain and climb up on the ranking index. And then the last one is the pipe drive announcement today that it's a fifth unicorn, has a value of more than $1 billion. I'm not going to go over these. These are just resources. When you get the slides, these links may not work in the presentation, but if you copy them to the browser, some articles about education, how innovation adoption in Estonia is occurring. This is one interesting topic that I've been kind of interested in overall, how what innovation really is and how it's adopted by different people and different organizations. And then they link to a government index. Conclusions then, I think it's definitely requires to be successful, requires the support of the society, e-identity, some card or some way to identify every person, and also, the citizens' readiness to accept that is a key enabler. Legislation needs to support this, otherwise it would not work. And investment in education is definitely a prerequisite for this. Challenges, there will be always digital, once you put something out on the internet, dealing with digital information, every picture can be copied. The blockchain can help a little bit to remove the copy issue, but there are other forms, and even there you hear about hacking, so it's not foolproof. But small country like Estonia can effectively contribute to the betterment of itself as well as the society as a whole. And I would be open to Q&A.
Great, thank you, Kalev.
Welcome.
Very interesting and very inspiring in terms of things we might be able to do in our country. So I have opened up the, anybody can unmute themselves if they have a question for Kalev. Also, Kalev, there are a few questions in the chat if you just scroll up and down.
Oh yeah, I can.
Anybody else have a question?
I just wonder what system of education do you have? Like, how is it broken down? And is university education free? And how much money do you spend in education, your per capita?
Yeah, that money question, exactly statistics, I probably need to look up. But Estonia, during the Soviet times, yes, education was free, even university education, completely free. Well, given that you had to find, when you went to university, you had to find your own living space. Not necessarily, there were dormitories as well, but sometimes if you wanted to have a little bit better setup, you had to find a way, and this stipend was even given, but it was a little bit too low to cover all your expenses. And Estonia has maintained most of it now, and that's a big discussion there. It's a pretty big burden for the society, especially the university education. The high school and even the preschool are also government taxpayer sponsored. But the universities now, of course, they have a paid track as well. So students who don't qualify for the normal 4-year program, or they wanted to get the second degree, and international students, they have to pay for their studies. In terms of investment, overall investment in education, There's been percentage of GDP I can think of, but I don't remember the numbers. So I can look up, or I can send it to Ron, the numbers or link somewhere to answer that question. Thank you. That's a good question.
I have a question. I thought the educational system that you were talking about was pretty good, coming up through your life there. I've heard good things about the USSR education system from grade school levels. But I was wondering, since Estonia became a free country, is there a lot of data processing type places in Estonia? And do you have the underwater cables running to other countries, or was that lost just because you didn't have the infrastructure to start that kind of thing up in your country?
Yeah, that all had to be built. Definitely, there was no before Estonia. Well, that's the nice thing, that it coincided with a .com revolution and everything, that it was natural to build up data links to Finland, to Sweden, and I think to Latvia as well. But the speed is still an issue sometimes, although I think now my wife is watching Netflix there, and it seems like it's quite reasonable. But definitely the data links had to be built. I hope I answered your question. Anybody else?
Other questions for Kalev?
Let me just see here.
What
I have a question.
did you run into with respect to people being reluctant to have their identity established by a card or online or a specific number?
Yeah, definitely. I think some people are somewhat hesitant, but overall, it's a small society, and I think the peer pressure is so strong that there's no way that the people just don't see the ability to avoid. They will miss so much of the everything is now, all the social programs and everything is basically built on this card that you can access, or you have it. So it's basically, you can think of this as sort of authoritarian, but I think people so socially agree that this is the only way to do it fairly.
How does the card systems work, and the other type systems work when you're trying to keep privacy concerns? Like, I know our country, I know our, everyone knows what our government's, CIA, FBI, that kind of thing. They know those terms, but I can't name the one for Estonia. They're very good at keeping their country secret. But when they start putting things on cards, is that going to be a concern with privacy in government?
Yeah, I think that is a concern, and some conservative voices now have brought that up, and that creates a challenge. But for example, this card works as it's a transition now, as a driver's license as well. So basically, you go, police will stop you, you give this card, they stick it in, or it has even a touch system, and they immediately know who you are. They compare the picture, and basically you get a fine, or they know your identity immediately, and whether you have, and even car registration, I think, is tied to this card. So they know everything about you, who you are. So yeah, those are clearly concerns, but that's the trade-off, I think, that at least Estonians have made, that there is no good alternative for this.
Kalev, I'm just curious. Oh, go ahead, Joel.
Allow foreigners to own property, real estate?
Yes, Estonia accepts that, yes.
Thank you.
I was just curious, Kalev, your own personal opinion, whether you think the United States could or should go this direction.
Yeah, I don't see really a good alternative, but also I see the obstacles and privacy issues, and in many ways maybe Estonia was just at the right time, at the right place at the right time, that we got early in, and if we can defend this reasonable level of privacy, then we can maintain it. Whereas in here, having a bigger country and traditionally maybe a little bit more hesitance, maybe we have missed the boat. But I can't think of a good alternative.
Kalev, thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. But could I offer a couple of fun facts?
Sure.
The Tallinn, the capital, was the first city in the world to have mobile parking throughout. In other words, you could pay for parking on the street with your cell phone. Also, Parliament has been paperless for probably about a dozen years. And the point that I remember is that one of the members of Parliament said that the only place that we want to have paper in the building is in the toilet. And that's something that has stuck with me for many, many years. So I might just add that I think possibly because of COVID, you can now conduct real estate transactions. Now that may be a temporary thing, but that's a recent change. But you still have to show up to get married and to get divorced. So thank you again.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah, Kalev, that was my brother who lives near Chicago, but he and I exchanged things about Estonia, and the education system question reminded me that the data are a little bit old, but Estonia joins only Finland and Canada in a certain metric of evaluating countries as their education systems provides achievement and evaluates the funding that they get and the efficiency of the overall system. And so those three countries are the top in the world in rankings of that particular metric.
PISA test is one of the things that they follow in Estonia. Yeah.
Of course, the corruption is very low there too. The corruption index is always quite good in Estonia.
Although that was, I think, one of the things that knocked off a little bit, a few points in Estonian ranking in that index that I was talking about. But it's kind of unfortunate. Estonia is so small. You have hard time finding a completely independent person if you're wanting some service. Something to be done, and if it's any special, I mean, you not normally find your neighbor or your cousin or somebody would do it. So some of it is because of that Estonia is so small. But generally the corruption indicators are very low. In terms of education, yeah, thanks, Mati. I know that one of the sort of dichotomies or issues that has occurred or discussed recently is that thanks to the free higher education, the university professor's salary has, in many cases, or lecturers' salary is lower than high school teachers, which is created a distortion in the educational system that it's very hard to find people to stay at the university and become professors because the initial salary, at least, is very low. I mean, it's the same here. Assistant professors make very little, and they need to crank out the research papers as crazy. And once they establish themselves, become chairman or research, lots of research grants, they can have pretty comfortable income. But that's one of the distortions. That's why they have started in Estonia talking about making the higher education somewhat paid or somewhat self-sustainable.
I thought the picture of the oscilloscope was amazing because I've been working on oscilloscopes in electronic engineering tech and getting them about that size, and they're back in the day that size. Concepts are pretty much the same, but I thought that picture was very cool on your slide presentation.
Yeah, I watched the Apple announcement. Let's see, that was Tuesday. Anybody followed that? The M1 announcement, one more thing. And if you looked at their labs, they had few oscilloscopes there too. So I'm glad to see that oscilloscopes still matter even in the new phone announcements. All right.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And as I said before, anybody who put their name and email in the chat, I will send a copy of Kalev's PowerPoint. I'm also planning to post a video of today's presentation on the internationalization website. And thank you all for participating. And thank you especially, Kalev, for your time and enlightening us about the e-government of Estonia.
Yeah, most welcome. And hopefully we'll have e-government here in Oregon and US as well, or something better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Well, everybody have a good day and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.